Day two of the John Harbaugh-less era in Baltimore, and the Ravens have already kicked off their head coaching search with a bang.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage, and we have a jam-packed episode as the Ravens have kicked off their head coaching search officially, with some big names in the mix already after firing John Harbaugh. We'll also talk about even more Harbaugh details being revealed on his firing and how everything went down. And it is crazy with everything that's coming out. And then finally, we'll just look at implications for the team, the coaches, the players, and what this all does actually mean for this Baltimore Ravens team. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Here with me today, it is former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver and Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail. And Q, I know everybody's been running around after this John Harbaugh news. Is the biggest story since I took over this show in 2019 and started it up that I've ever covered. It is absolutely massive. It's the biggest story in sports right now. What are your initial thoughts? How you doing? How you feeling? This is a pretty seismic change in Baltimore after nearly 2 decades. John Harbaugh out as Baltimore Ravens head coach.
So, a couple things. I think it is surreal that, yes, he is no longer the Ravens head coach. I do clearly remember the first time meeting John and interacting with him. Nothing but fond memories in that regards. I think he is a human, as a person. There's no negative from my vantage point with regards to how he treated me. And ironically enough, my son that we know, Qadry, he was a part of the Ravens team on the practice squad in the 2024 season. And, John didn't have to allow that process to take place from a coach's standpoint. He allowed him to, really earn himself an opportunity. He did. And so all of that, I'm grateful for that. The analyst in me and the football minded fan, if you will, recognizes that, the king is dead, long live the king, that his time in Baltimore had run its course. Steve Bisciotti, he was clear, I want to win now. You and I, in a lighthearted way, but we were, in our tone, lighthearted, but in the content of our hearts, we're serious, like, this is a now win team. And in that now win team, he didn't get it done. Started off 1-5, and it just kind of was uphill from there. So I think for what we had seen, this is going to be a new era and a new beginning. And it starts right away where he was let go. And obviously there are reports out there that Anthony Weaver was already in the building and having opportunities to interact and see if he is possibly the fit to lead this Ravens ball club to hopefully multiple opportunities to win championships.
Yeah, and it is certainly a weird feeling. I mean, look, a guy's anywhere for 18 years, and it's just becomes status quo. It becomes like the routine, and all of a sudden, that guy's no longer there. It's a new era, one that was definitely needed, but it was nothing personal. It was nothing against John Harbaugh. It's just like I think a lot of people understood, you and I as well, that like it was just time. Where even in today's landscape, Q, in sports, you rarely see guys even make it to 10 years with one singular team. I mean, you're seeing guys fired after one season a lot here in the NFL landscape and in the sports landscape. So 18 years for John Harbaugh, it's a crazy long tenure, but it is one that needed to end after the playoff failures, the fourth quarter collapses, and the lack of success in the postseason. But Lamar, and again, it doesn't all fall on John Harbaugh, but after so many times of going through the same thing and after some of the stuff that has popped up, it was the right decision here. And as you mentioned, the Ravens already kicking off their head coaching search, a couple of names already have been requested to interview, Anthony Weaver being one of them. So let's start with him. Obviously, he has ties to Baltimore, both as a player and as a coach. So familiar with the Baltimore area and just the Ravens in general. Went to Miami when a lot of Ravens coaches were leaving back in 2012. Well, once the whole Mike McDonald, Denard Wilson, Anthony Weaver was a part of that, went to Miami to be their defensive coordinator. He's been there for the last 2 seasons under Mike McDaniel, and he's had mixed results there. The defense was good last year in terms of a stat perspective, but fell off a little bit this year, and this was just a weird year in Miami in general. It seems like a guy, and we know he's a guy that, is very player-oriented, seems to get the best out of his guys, can relate to the players, seems to be very highly energetic and motivates his guys, and obviously very strategic as well. How would you like the fit? I know that people were kind of wondering if he would be Baltimore's defensive coordinator once Mike McDonald left for Seattle a couple of years ago. They went with Zach Orr. There have been a couple of reports, it feels like, that the Ravens maybe view him as a head coach more than a defensive coordinator. So how would you like that fit with Anthony Weaver in Baltimore if that was the name they ended up choosing?
Yeah, I think if Anthony Weaver does get this opportunity, I think he, just brings an attitude of excellence, because some of those defensive units that he was a part of, it was Ed Reed and Ray Lewis and the Terrell Suggs of the world that I was like, yo, this is how we do things here. And I think that kind of molded, part of his journey as a coach. And so the way in which they want to have some level of continuity, and I use that word strongly because for Steve Bisciotti, he wanted to model his organization after the Steelers as far as continuity. And you referenced the teams that have had, oh, we got to get it right this time. Oh, we definitely got to get it right this time. Okay, Cleveland. Okay, Las Vegas. When are you going to get it right, Arizona Cardinals? You've had this like revolving door of coaches just come in and go, come in and go, come in and go. So for John to last those 18 years, it was Steve's wanting certainty as opposed to uncertainty. And how can we fix things within the certainty? The Anthony Weaver certainty, is it Eric DaCosta going to be next on the hot seat because he built the program the way he built the program and brought in the players? Or how does that all look and how does that all fit? But Anthony Weaver is at least from an interview standpoint, a good start to like, all right, well, let's figure this out. Let's see what that continuity is going to look like and move and groove from there. So in my mind, I think that it's off to a right start with Anthony Weaver as the opportunity to potentially be the Ravens' next head coach.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think you also have to kind of take into account, I know there are a lot of differing opinions on this, Q, whether the Ravens should go with a more defensive or offensive-minded head coach and then kind of fill in the rest of the staff around that. Because, again, I've been telling people, because I've gotten the question a lot, when you fire a head coach, you're essentially firing his entire staff as well. So Todd Monken will not be back. Zach Orr will not be back unless they decide to hire Monken as the head coach, which based off reports is not going to happen. So you're letting go of a lot of guys, and that new head coach is going to bring in guys around him, new OC, new DC. So if you hire Weaver, maybe he keeps calling plays and he hires a DC that is more so just there for game stuff. And then the OC is much more of a young, bright offensive mind. But they did also request to interview Q, a bright offensive mind over in Seattle. So the Ravens say to Seattle, you're going to take our young coordinator, but we might take yours back in Clint Kubiak. And Kubiak obviously comes from the Kubiak family, Shanahan tree, whatever you want to talk about there. But I think a lot of people, myself included, are excited about the potential of Clint Kubiak coming to Baltimore. The Ravens requesting an interview. So the two names were both Weaver and Kubiak. This one intrigues me because I think that first of all, Gary Kubiak was one of my favorite Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinators. I think he, I remember that 2014 team. I'm still mad they didn't win a Super Bowl, but he's a guy that, according to a lot of people who have been around him, he's a tireless worker, puts in a ton of hours. I mean, that's something John Harbaugh did And, he was in the building, sleeping on his office couch, like doing all that. So, that's something with Kubiak. But his scheme, I think, is what intrigues a lot of people where, they're outside zone. They got a bunch of counters and, you got a lot of play action in there. It seems to mesh the run and the pass games very well. I mean, it's essentially like the Shanahan Kubiak style of offense. The explosive plays down the field, which I think Baltimore's been lacking over the course of Lamar Jackson's tenure. It's been there at times, but not as consistent as I would like it. You also see a lot of smart personnel decisions, formation decisions, and there are some flaws. I'm not, there have been questions about his personality, which I don't really feed too much into. I mean, I think that, guys can evolve in a head coach role. I mean, we heard the personality questions with Ben Johnson. He's taking his shirt off in post games and, relating to his players. So I think, to me, I'm not really as concerned with that aspect of it. But I think Kubiak would bring an entire system that Lamar Jackson and the rest of this offense could thrive in. So how are you feeling about a young, bright offensive mind coming to Baltimore to be a head coach and coach Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like it's the young, bright offensive mind that I think would be great as a offensive coordinator, but I don't necessarily know if it is about being a head coach because, I think there's a blend of being a coordinator and leading the team, and those are two different worlds. I think Mike McDonald is showing that, yeah, I'm young, I'm bright-minded, but kind of had a little edge to him that was like head coach edge and the attention to detail and all the things and being able to, see the bigger picture on the offensive, defensive, and special team sides of the ball and, what the roster looks like. But yet at the same time, keeping his talent being the talent over on the uh, the defense side of the ball. Now, can Clint do that? That's the elephant in the room. And I think that's something that needs to be really dissected and looked at. Can he command a room? Can Clint look in the guys and be like, look, we're about to face the Cincinnati Bengals. We're about to face the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're about to face the Cleveland Browns. AFC North is ours. Let's go. You're about to have, the Patriots come up in here. You're about to have, whatever the next team that's a really big team that has put some good football on tape in the 2026 season. Can Clint be that guy to motivate his team? And who's going to be sitting there and, making the critical challenge that will then be saying, hey, look, we had that critical challenge. It worked. Or that Sean Payton, how do I get Bo Nix to be the most and the best that he can be to then lead us to being a number one seed? Things along those lines that you would look at in a coach. And can Clint be that guy? I think, yeah, Anthony Weaver certainly could be that guy. I don't know if Clint could be that guy, but I know he could be an offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens if y'all want to go ahead and give him a title that will elevate him and some money behind said title to woo him over from Seattle.
Man, that'd be a dream. He's getting head coach interviews and doing his things. That might be a pipe dream at this point, but there are a lot of different ways you can look at it for sure. Whether they go defensive minded, that motivator, and want to hire an offensive guy like that bright young mind, or if they want to go the opposite with a young offensive mind, then you get a defensive coordinator in there like a Jim Schwartz or something that is going to go and have that defense ready to rock. So there's a lot of conversation about the head coach in Baltimore, whoever that will be. Coming up, we'll continue that conversation as well as talk about more details about John Harbaugh's firing being revealed. So stay tuned. Plenty coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real, managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control, and who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Now, I was shocked when Rocket Money showed me I was paying for a lot of subscriptions I completely forgotten about. It's already saved me money, and I love how it tracks all my subscriptions and lets me cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. No more hunting down customer service numbers. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're back in momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Back here, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still here with you, talking Ravens football, talking John Harbaugh in the search for the Ravens' new head coach. Appreciate you for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. We have the regular show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We have bonus episodes on the weekends when there are headlines. We have instant reactions to pieces of big news and a bunch more content. And also, if you want extra add-on content, the Everydayer Club, you can go check out that link in the description, as well as on the Locked On Ravens page on the Locked On website. But all right, Q, we talked about Clint Kubiak. We talked about Anthony Weaver. There are a lot of other names out there that could be potential options. I think Brian Flores is a very popular name. I think guys like, even guys who haven't coached in a little bit. I've seen Mike McCarthy's name pop up at times. I'm not so sure if that's anything different than what John Harbaugh was, but I've seen the name, so I'm just throwing out names. I got a lot of Rex Ryan in the instant reaction show that I did on Monday, or on Tuesday. So that one, I wasn't so hot on that one, but I saw a lot of names on that.
Could you imagine him and Lamar in a team meeting or just coaching him in general after some of his divisive comments? No, I don't see it.
Man, yeah, we can get Nick Wright in there as the head coach and see how that goes for the Ravens.
Yeah.
see what that dynamic is like. But I mean, I think that there are a lot of options for the Ravens. Obviously, in firing John Harbaugh, there is a risk that you're not going to get it right. I have confidence that they will, but with the way that this team is positioned, and Q, you said it, this team is positioned to win now. That is why the Ravens moved on from John Harbaugh, because they don't want to win in the regular season. Not that they did a lot of that this year anyway, but that's been the thing. It's like regular season into lack of playoff success. If you hire a young coordinator, you're taking a risk. Now, that risk can have major payoffs. And like you said, Steve Bisciotti's not looking for that. This guy's going to be here for 3 years and then see you later. He wants that guy that's going to be the next John Harbaugh to be in Baltimore for hopefully 18 seasons with championships and success and whatnot. So hiring a young offensive mind or a young coordinator like that could be. I honestly don't know why Matt Burke, the DC over in Houston, isn't getting as much run in this conversation. I think Matt Burke and that Houston defense is scary. I'm not so sure Baltimore would have had a lot of success against them if they had advanced and played the Texans in the wild card round. I think Mike LaFleur, who's the Rams offensive coordinator, he's an interesting name to watch. There are a couple other Rams assistants that could fill in here. So for you, how much of a risk is this for Baltimore? And for you, is this a risk that they needed to take considering the state of the team and what was happening? Because it looked like this whole situation materialized pretty quickly based off of all the reports.
It's interesting because if you do wait, then you put yourself at risk to losing out on a potential match, if you will, that, this guy's, perfect for us and we want him. Oh, somebody else scooped him up. And so in that somebody else scooping him up mindset, yeah, and you want continuity, you want to kind of get a vision of, all right, well, here's where our scouts are going to be going out there and getting the personnel to help us kind of get back on track. The season sleeps for no one. I remember, right after, Eric DeCosta was saying after they lost the championship game to Kansas City, and Taylor Swift and them were sitting there on the field hoisting up the Lamar Hunt trophy. he was like, "Hey, we gotta get ready to get on a plane and go down to the Senior Bowl and start building a roster." That being said, somehow they built it and forgot about the guard position. Anyway, so with that said, oh, the pass rush, do we? Yeah, we didn't build a pass rush. So when you also look at, wow, we did get a safety, but huh. So when you look at what they did with regards to, trying to build a roster, they had Roquan Smith, but did they? No, they
Yeah.
didn't really have much depth after that. So that kind of, yeah. So my point is that the beat goes on, and you best hustle up and get a head coach so you can be a part of the show and not be the sideshow looking like a dysfunctional organization that we've seen in the past from other organizations. We ain't trying to have that here in Baltimore.
There are a lot of ways they could go with it again, but replacing John Harbaugh, who became a larger than life figure in Baltimore, obviously from a football perspective, this team just seemed to lost its spunk. The message didn't really seem like it was landing anymore, and BQ got a lot of reports over the course of the last 24 and 36 hours about how this kind of all went down, where this was exclusively a Steve Bisciotti decision. We found out, yes, John Harbaugh reported directly to Steve Bisciotti, not to Eric DeCosta. And there were a lot of different opinions taken into account, according to Ian Rappaport, with, players and coaches. And seemed like Harbaugh, again, was surprised with the fact that he was fired. He thought he was going to be able to return with his same staff, or at least a lot of it. He wanted Todd Monken back. He wanted Zach Orr back. But that apparently, according to Diana Rossini, was a key contention point, that John Harbaugh was unable to move on from Todd Monken. He wanted Todd Monken back, and seems like that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back. But Ian Rappaport also reported John Harbaugh lost the locker room. He said, quote, "At the end of the day, the players just simply had doubts about whether they wanted to play for him as their head coach. The opinions of players was valued. It was listened to. And it's not just Lamar Jackson." Started to sound like with Lamar and John Harbaugh not being on the same page, and it continued throughout the locker room. And then Jeff Zrebiec talked about how everything points in like the last couple of hours of how that thing went down. Something changed, because it looked like, by all accounts, most people expected that John Harbaugh would continue to be the head coach moving forward. And Jeff knew that it had to do with staffing. And then there was other stuff, because then Adam Schefter went on the Pat McAfee show yesterday and essentially disputed what Ian Rappaport had to say, and said that players were going in his office and crying and hugging him, and that he said that the notion that Harbaugh lost the locker room, he said that there's no way that information is any less true than it is. And so he mentioned Mark Andrews by name, Zay Flowers by name, Isaiah Likely, and he said all these players coming in crying, hugging him, giving him long farewells. This is a crazy situation, but it seems like this escalated very quickly, but it started, it feels like, with a lot of deeper rooted issues in the organization.
You're always going to have your guys that love you, and you're always going to have guys that don't. That's just the way it is. And I think for John, he probably had his inner circle of guys that really loved him and respected him, and are going to miss him and probably do all the crying. And I'm not trying to say that like, that's like a bad thing or some kind of, oh, geez, you can't cry. No, you can't cry, and you can, show your emotions. Nothing wrong with that. I cry a lot, and I did not cry when John was let go, but I certainly was. No, I sometimes can be haha funny. There's nothing funny about a person being let go of their job. If it's an assistant coach, if it's a head coach, if it's in any profession, sure. So let's get that straight. But I am saying that yes, those two things can be true at the same time. You probably had guys crying and really wanted him to be their coach. And you probably really had guys that were like, yo, see you later. You just jacked me up the way you treated me. That's the way it goes in life in the NFL.
There are so many different reports about the entire situation. I mean, just Zrebiec mentioned that Harbaugh didn't even have a chance to inform his staff, and that was pretty indicative of how quickly this all went down. Sashi Brown and Eric DeCosta informed the staff of the departure. There's so many moving parts and pieces, and the Ravens apparently, according to Ian Rappaport, they want a head coach that is going to help out Lamar Jackson. But it's interesting what the messaging is in terms of what that actually means for Lamar. So coming up, we'll talk about the implications of this entire situation for Lamar, for the coaching staff, for the players, and for the team. Be right back here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Ultimate QB Football Legend. Hey guys, draft picks positions are set and so many teams are looking for their franchise QB. Ever wishing to become a pro QB, getting drafted first overall by the Ravens? Well, now you can. There's a mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of a number one draft pick quarterback, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness, to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the number one QB career mode game on the mobile app stores, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. You'll deal with the ups and downs of a QB career, from rookie nerves to playoff drama, and every choice shapes your journey. Ultimate QB is totally free to play, has no ads, and more. It's 100% offline. Perfect for when you want to sneak in a quick game or two on the go. Just head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in your app store. And we've got something special just for you guys. Use the promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, in the game store to get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB Football Legend, QB1. It's your legacy. Moving along, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Qadry Ismail still here with you. John Harbaugh out as Baltimore Ravens head coach after 18 seasons. Crazy amount of time, long tenure. The Ravens officially posted their tribute video on Wednesday. John Harbaugh and Steve Bisciotti both releasing statements. First time, Q, I've actually seen an emoji be used in a statement before. John Harbaugh with the smiley face. I'm like, hold on, was that a typo or what's going on?
Yeah. Maybe
no
Allison
idea.
put that in there for special effects. Who knows?
I have no clue. And it was weird. It was like right after a period, like a sentence had just ended, and then the smiley face started the sentence. So I'm like, all right,
okay.
what are we doing here? But there's still so much that has to be sorted out with the situation. You know, I'm sure John Harbaugh will speak, you know, not in statement form at some point here over the next couple of days or weeks. There are a lot of implications that, you know, John Harbaugh will have a coaching job very soon. You know, a lot of teams are already reaching out. Giants, a front runner. Falcons have been listed. Browns potentially. So I feel like Harbaugh will land on his feet. But Ian Rappaport apparently reported here the Ravens are looking for a head coach that will unleash Lamar Jackson and get the absolute most out of him. So for me, Q, this was a choice. I think Steve Bisciotti chose Lamar Jackson over John Harbaugh. I think that was the right decision. Felt like maybe there were avenues where they could have run it back with both of them, but at the end of the day, felt like it wasn't the right thing to do anymore. So for you, do you think Lamar Jackson will be involved in this process? Do you think his opinion, I'm not saying Lamar's going to hire the head coach or anything, but, you know, do you think that he will have at least some input or be involved in some of the meetings that goes on here? Because we've seen that a lot with these franchise players, and the Ravens have made, you know, it very known that Lamar is a part of this team and very deeply integrated in what they do, both obviously on the field, but also, you know, his opinion matters off of it too.
It matters. No question about it. He's certainly, you know, he's raised the bar of excellence by being the franchise's quarterback. I think there's a delicate balance in all of that process. So I think his voice matters, but I think ultimately the way Steve likes to do it, get the collective thoughts of many in that building and then make the decision based upon those collective thoughts. And sure, I'm sure Lamar, whatever the percentage is for Steve, will be that percentage, and he'll make his decision. I think in Steve's mind, he's like, yeah, I want to win now. I want to hoist up a Lombardi now, and it goes through my quarterback who I have now. So will that give him a higher percentage than compared to, you know, a scenario where it might be, hey, I want to win in the next 5 years. I'm going to give him a chance to build. And, you know, hypothetically, our plans, you know, don't include Lamar Jackson. And so therefore we're not going to, you know, something, whatever. But because it is a win now, and because it is Lamar Jackson, that's going to be the key catalyst for them winning. Yeah, I think he'll have a strong input on where they feel this direction is going, to hopefully solidify a spot as whomever is the next Ravens head coach.
Yeah, and there were also reports coming from Gary Myers, who's a longtime journalist, and he's been a lot of places, written a lot of books. He said that, again, the firing was solely Steve Bisciotti's decision, but he went against his front office in doing so. And the front office was unable to talk Steve Bisciotti out of this. And again, there was another report here from Gary in his tweet that said Harbaugh did not have a problem with Lamar Jackson. The issue was between Jackson and Todd Monken. And I think, again, when you look back at this whole situation, Q, I mean, we heard John Harbaugh throw Todd Monken under the bus multiple times, and it's kind of like, wait a second, this was the final straw, as John was going to bat for Todd after a season of stuff where there were pieces coming out about Todd and Lamar and all that. It's been two very drama-filled years for very different reasons in Baltimore. And with that foundation beginning to crack and, with everything that was going on in Baltimore, it just felt like to me, it's not about John Harbaugh not being a good coach or not being deserving of another opportunity or all this stuff, but sometimes it's just time. And just because one organization should fire a guy doesn't mean that person can't have success elsewhere, like Andy Reid. That's the big example everyone's talking about. And it's crazy to think that this team was playing football like a half a week ago against the Steelers with the opportunity for the playoffs and to get there and to host a playoff game. And now here we are, essentially 4 or 5 days later. We're talking about a team that is about to be very much reset with their staff. I'm sure philosophies. And like you said, Q, I do think, much like we talked about with the Greg Roman shield coming up off of John Harbaugh, I think the John Harbaugh shield is coming up off of Eric DeCosta, and he is the one that now attention shifts to, and how he builds this roster out during the offseason and how that head coach search goes with Steve Bisciotti, Eric DeCosta, Lamar Jackson, whatever involvement he has in the rest of the staff.
Yeah, so that's where I think, the bigger picture is him building up a roster. Okay, Lamar gets hurt, but who brought in Cooper Rush? Who signed off on that deal? Again, Daniel Faalele and Voorhees, you're the one who drafted them. You're the one who drafted Trenton Simpson, although Trenton kind of found his niche. But yeah, I think bigger picture-wise, though, what you wanted from him and what really happened, meh. There were some other signings and such that you're kind of like, okay. So bottom line is, from this point forward, you just can't blame John Harbaugh. It is now, yes, okay, I'm sticking my foot down and I'm getting rid of what I deem as not a bad apple, but I'm trying to think of a term to say, look, I got rid of a person that had us stuck in neutral. When I look at it again and we stuck in neutral, I know who I'm looking at next. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And again, like, being complacent and being neutral is, in my opinion, the worst place you can be is a sports franchise where you're not bad enough to rebuild and you're not good enough to win championships. You're just kind of like, all right, well, we're just kind of going to do this for the next 10 years. And that's not what anybody wants. But again, it was the mentality, that clip of John Harbaugh from the lounge before the season started about him saying, all that stuff about the Super Bowl or bust mindset, about how it's garbage and phony. Like, you can't have that mindset when you have a superstar quarterback and a real opportunity to win championships every single season. So we will see how this all unfolds. Q, I appreciate you hopping on. Thanks so much. Before I get you out of here, tell people where they can find you and what you're working on, because I know you are busy.
Yeah, no, this is crazy because mindset-wise, it's about missile training, and missiletraining.com is where you can find me for my sports performance and human movement training. Doesn't matter the age, doesn't matter the sport, team, or individual. My pro day prep is coming up. So I have a couple of guys that are in the building getting themselves ready for their opportunities for the next level. So yes, you can email me, and missiletraining.com is where you can interact. Of course, WJZ, we just finished off our Purple pregame shows for the regular season, but we'll certainly have our Purple shows throughout the off season that you can tune in and check me out. And Locked On Ravens, Kevin Ostracker and I, right here each and every week. I have been grateful to be a part of this show with him and breaking everything down. Unfortunately, this season is going to be an interesting one because this is where Kevin takes over and I kind of like, okay, fine. We got to speculate. But I think this time it's going to be a little bit fun for me because we're not going to be talking compensatory picks as much as we have been before in the whole, oh, we want value. We have a value pick. Okay, no more value picks. We want some studs. Yeah. Locked on Ravens, of course. We got the squad show. Kevin Ostriker, myself, and Sam and Joku. We break it all down for you, giving you all your Ravens needs. And check out that Q rant every now and then on the squad show.
Yeah, you got to hear today with you saying aura forming. I don't know if I'm going to get that out of my brain. So you would have to make you the new head coach, Q, so you can say aura forming at the mic and have that be the thing. But be sure to go check out Q. All his work in the description down below. He does awesome stuff. Q, I appreciate you as always. And thanks so much to everybody who watched and listened today to Locked On Ravens. Coming up, going to have a lot more Ravens content and coverage coming your way, as we always do. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.